Cheesehead country, let's ride. Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I am your host, John Delray. Thanks for joining me as we preview the Giants versus Packers, the matchup occurring in London this coming Sunday between two 3-1 football teams. On today's episode, I'm going to explore all the changes that the Giants made this offseason, what direction they're heading as a team, and then what things that I am most looking forward to in this matchup. I've seen a bunch of talk online about, is this potentially a trap game for the Green Bay Packers? And I was concerned about it last week with New England, and the Packers still pull out the win. Honestly, though, not as concerned about it this go-around. The Packers are, in general, just a vastly superior team to the Giants, and I think that this should be a win. Not only that, but I talked earlier this week about this could be the game where the offense just snaps out of its funk. And there's some very definitive reasons for that, beyond just the feeling of autumn and London and the morning. There's something about London and Aaron Rodgers that just hits me right in the middle of my brain that says he's going to have a big game. So there are some things that we can look at that enlighten that point of view. So before we dive into talking about the Giants and how these two teams match up, why don't you drop a comment down below? Let me know either what it is that you are most concerned about with this matchup, or what it is that you are most looking forward to in this matchup. I know it could be a trap game, but I just don't see it. I know that there's some concerns while also being a lot of positives for the Green Bay Packers. So let me know what you think before we get to the game, and I will answer everyone, and let's see how it all turns out. So looking at the New York Giants, this is a 3-1 football team. Of course, Packers are 3-1 as well. As Aaron Nagler noted on Twitter earlier this week, this is the first time in the history of these London games that two winning teams are going against each other in London. Which, I suppose happens when Jacksonville was like the London team for years, but man, on behalf of the United States, I'm very sorry, England, that we have sent you just bad football for a long time, apparently. So, really looking forward to this matchup, even if these are two quite different 3-1 teams. But how did the Giants get to 3-1? Well, they've beaten the Titans, the Panthers, and the Bears, and their one loss came against the Dallas Cowboys. When was it the last time that the Giants and Packers met? Well, for that, you'd have to look back at 2019. The Packers visited the Giants in New York, and it was a 31-13 win for the Packers. Now, keep in mind in that game in 2019 that these were two very, very different teams. Of course, the Giants more so different. In 2019, they had a completely different staff, and really a lot of pieces were different beyond the quarterback and running back. To look at those two, though, Saquon Barkley had 19 carries for 83 yards. Daniel Jones went 20 of 37 for 240 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. A pretty handed win by the Packers back in 2019. But how is it that this Giants team is different now? Well, for one, they've got a brand new head coach. Brian Daboll, first-year head coach, brand new head coach, had spent years as the offensive coordinator for Buffalo with all the high-powered Josh Allen offenses, and now he's running the show himself in New York. And he has two highly experienced coordinators with him. Mike Kafka, while still relatively new as an O-coordinator, all things relative, has spent a lot of years as a quarterback coach beyond being an offensive coordinator. You look at the defensive coordinator side of the ball, and you have a very accomplished defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale, someone who's overseen the Baltimore defenses for a good stretch of time. How else is this team different, though? Well, they spent resources this year trying to revamp that offensive line. Last year, it was a very injured offensive line. And even when it was healthy, it wasn't particularly great. So they invested in it this offseason. Their two most notable free agent signings actually both were on the interior of the offensive line. Mark Glowinski was the guard. He was actually a top 25 rated PFF guard coming over from Indianapolis, where with Quentin Nelson, he formed one of the best guard duos in football last year. And then beyond that, they added John Feliciano, who had spent some time in Buffalo with Brian Daboll. Now he's playing center for the Giants. Pair that with a number of their draft picks. One of their top picks, first-round pick Evan Neal, is now a tackle on the offensive line. So you could see that the Giants placed an emphasis on the offensive line in order to revamp it and make the Brian Daboll offense go. In addition, other draft picks were Kayvon Thibodeau, the edge player. He was their first-round pick. And Wan'Dale Robinson was their second-round pick at wide receiver. Those are really, of all of the draft picks the Giants made, the most notable in a lot of ways. The most prominent players on the team. But this is still a different Giants roster than even last year because they had a number of departures. In amongst them was James Bradbury, Logan Ryan, Evan Ingram. Pair that with Will Hernandez and a few of the other offensive linemen that they replaced, and this is a vastly different roster. But it's not really any better than it was. The secondary has absolutely taken a step back this year, and in addition, the offensive line changes that the Giants have made have not worked out, and we're going to be getting into that real shortly. One little statistical quirk, though, going back to the head coach that I was talking about. This is the fourth time in 5 games that the Green Bay Packers are going against a brand new head coach, which is fascinating. Like, it really is. I mean, Todd Bowles for the Buccaneers, he's a second-time head coach, but his first year with the Bucs as their head coach, going against Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, Matt Eberflus in Chicago, and now they got Brian Daboll. The only one who isn't in his first year of head coach as a new team was Bill Belichick, who's the polar opposite of a new coach, having coached the Patriots for 23 years. So just a little statistical anomaly. I would be very interested to know when the last time that a team started off 4 games of 5 going against a brand new head coach. Interesting stuff. So we are at Friday, even though the teams are over in London and on a completely different schedule than us back in the States now, we do already have the injury report for the game. Now for the Packers, it looks pretty good. David Bakhtiari's off the injury report. Alan Lazard off the injury report. These are great things. A guy still left on it, though, Adrian Amos, trying to work his way back from concussion. He got the official questionable tag. Wyatt, their rookie defensive lineman, and Tariq Carpenter, their rookie safety, also got questionable designations. But that's it. No other injuries to report. Everyone else was taken off the injury report, which is obviously a great sign that the Packers are returning to health. And if Adrian Amos is able to go this Sunday, obviously that's great because you get Amos back. But the secondary reason why that's a big boost for the Packers is it means Rudy Ford can go back to his full allotment of special team snaps. Because we saw in the game against the Patriots, as I mentioned on Wednesday, when you took Rudy Ford out of there, coverages got worse. Now, that wasn't Ford's fault. He had to go play defense. But if Amos is able to come back and Ford is able to return to his full role on special teams, that only helps. Looking across at the Giants and their injury report, it's a little bit more substantial. Leonard Williams, one of the best defenders on that team, has got the questionable tag. And then they have a litany of individuals who are out. And that includes a few of their wide receivers, Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney. Wan'Dale Robinson also is out. Sterling Shepard also is out. I mean, this is, again, a vastly depleted core that they're going against. Now, Richie James appears that he will be playing. Slayton appears that he will be playing. I didn't find anything that said that he was going to be out. But nonetheless, this is a destroyed receiving core for the New York Giants. And the Packers are again going against a completely injury-ravaged core. No different than they've seen the last couple of weeks. Beyond that, though, the Giants have even more injuries. Henry Mondo, the defensive lineman, he's out. Cordell Flatt, the corner, out. Azeez Ojulari, a starting outside linebacker for the Giants, out. And then Tyrod Taylor, their backup quarterback, out. Now, why is that a big deal? Normally that's not that notable, but Daniel Jones himself has been dealing with an injury all week. Now, he did not get any game designation. We know that he's going to play. But if he's weakened in any capacity, the Giants don't have their veteran backup to suddenly pull into duty. So what are the really, really big keys to this game? What am I looking for most? Number one is just the Green Bay front against the Giants' offensive line. I talked about how they added Glowinski and Feliciano to the offensive line, drafted Evan Neal. It's just straight up not working, though. It's just not. I mean, Evan Neal, even though he's a first-round pick, has been turning in pretty middling PFF numbers, if not below average, and he's given up 4 sacks in 4 games. That's the kind of statistics that makes Rashawn Gary salivate. He is going to eat if he's lined up against rookie Evan Neal. Beyond that, though, I mean, the interior, Feliciano, Glowinski, it's been bad. I mean, not just like, okay, it's been bad. 4/5 of their offensive line has been awful. The only one that truly is the standout is Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas is one of the Giants' starting tackles. He is the single highest rated PFF O-lineman in football this year through 4 games. He has been a statue. There is no getting past that mountain of a man. But the rest of the O-line, the 4 of the 5, is just outright a sieve. And Joe Barry has to call up an aggressive plan to get past that line. Fluster Daniel Jones. Get in the backfield and worry most about Saquon Barkley. Speaking of Saquon Barkley, he is the key to this entire Giants offense, whether they have wide receivers or not. On the year so far, Saquon has 463 yards and 2 touchdowns. A stat that just seems insane, though, is 342. 342 of those 463 yards have come after contact. That means per carry, that's over 4 yards per carry after contact. Which means Saquon alone is helping to make up for the deficiencies in the Giants' offensive line. And you want to dig even farther? The Giants seem to be using that in their favor to open up the passing game. Daniel Jones, when he's been kept clean in the pocket, has a 74% completion percentage. When he's under pressure, it drops all the way to 48%. One of the ways that they've been keeping Daniel Jones clean is by calling a lot of play action. The Giants actually have been one of the best teams in the NFL at utilizing the play action to this point. Overall, they're 31 of 40 on play action dropbacks. It's 78% completion percentage, 262 yards completed. 2 of the 3 touchdowns that Daniel Jones have thrown have come on play action plays. So it really just feels like the Giants are saying, all right, our O-line is a sieve. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use play action to slow him down. And Saquon, you're just going to have to absorb the contact and work through it. But Saquon, in turn, in the cycle, you can help open up the play action. They're 3-1. It's worked to some degree. This is not an overall high-scoring offense. Their defense gives up basically as many points as they score. But nonetheless, you see how the Giants have been able to move the ball, and it 100% revolves around Saquon. If you can shut him down, you will have also successfully shut down their play action. Because any other time that they attempt to pass the ball that isn't play action, it's not going nearly as well. I mean, the PFF grades on their play action is by a mile their top type of pass. Whereas you look at a team like the Packers and it's a lot more spread. Yes, play action may be their best, but the grading is a lot more even across the board. So, something to keep in mind, the key to shutting down this game is Saquon Barkley. I saw on Twitter this morning that Bruce Irons talked about, hell, maybe it's like Madden, but can we just go 4-4? Like 4 D linemen, 4 linebackers, and then just have like Stokes and Jair run around out there with Douglas or Savage at safety. Let's not worry about getting Amos back. Because, 4-4, just shut them down. 8 in the box every single play. Who are they going to throw to? Honestly, I don't hate it. Yeah, it seems kind of nuts playing 4-4 in this day and age, but at the same time, maybe. Will Joe Barry do it? No. No way in sweet goodness. Now, I will say that going back and rewatching the game, Joe Barry last week did adapt throughout the course of the game. Yes, it did start out with a lot of single high. And the Patriots utilized a 6th offensive lineman on a lot of snaps. And the Packers just didn't seem to care. They just kept calling what they were calling. But they did adapt. They eventually did switch to single high. At a higher rate than I realized just watching the game. So will Joe Barry make adjustments? Will he stack more boxes? Sure. Is he going to call blitzes? Probably not. But you have to think philosophically that he's going to do enough to clog the lanes or at least call the plays. Eventually, D linemen besides Kenny Clark do have to make plays. Now, looking at the Packer offense against the Giant defense, and you have a different tale. The Packers' offense, as we know, has been absurdly inconsistent. Yes, they rank tied for second in the NFL in terms of explosive plays. And an explosive play by this metric is defined as a rushing play over 10 yards and a passing play over 20. Thus far, they've logged 35 of those plays in 4 games. Tied for second in the NFL. But even this week, Chris Sims, son of former Phil Simms, former NFL quarterback Chris Sims, talked about how the Packers' style of play doesn't have any explosive plays. There's no explosion here for the offense. And it's unsustainable. And he got absolutely lambasted for saying that the Packers don't have any explosive plays. But, they do. But at the same time, I can at least see the logic that says why they don't. And here's why. Yes, they have the second total offensive plays in the NFL. No doubt about it. Yeah, the rushing game of over 10 yards, it's a piece of cake. Aaron Jones is averaging almost 7 yards a carry this year. Of course he's going to get a bunch over 10. But when you're looking at how far down the field the Packers are throwing the ball, it becomes really easy to understand why someone feels as though there's no explosive plays happening. Because they don't throw the ball down the field. And when they do, it's not good. Like diving into the numbers, 38% of Aaron Rodgers' attempts have happened between 0 and 9 yards from the line of scrimmage. 27% of his throws have been behind the line of scrimmage. That's where you constantly see all those wide receiver screens to Dobbs. And that's a lot. That's a lot. We're looking at 65% of Rodgers' throws being between negative and 9 yards. It's a lot of throws. Now, they've only thrown beyond 20 yards. So if you want to call an explosive play the fact that the ball has to be in the air for 20 yards, they've only attempted, well, I should say they've only completed 6 of those. They've only completed 6 on 17 attempts. It's a 13% completion percentage. And on a lot of those plays, if you're going back and watching the game, on a lot of those plays, it's not even close. Now, of course, there have been a couple drops. We've seen it from Watson. We've seen it from Dobbs. But there's been a lot of throws over 20 yards that Rodgers is not even close to the receiver. So, how does that change? Well, for one, I think the New York Giants are the prime opponent to go against to fix this exact problem. It's been talked ad nauseum so far this year about how almost every single defense, including the Packers, have switched to 2 high safeties. Don't let anything get over the top. According to Dusty Evely on Twitter, the Giants are doing damn near the opposite. They're using one of the highest rates in the NFL of only 1 high safety. They're doing a lot of man, less zone. They are blitzing a ton. which should be expected from Wink Martindale in his days in Baltimore, but they're blitzing a ton and not getting home all that often. Dexter Lawrence has 2 sacks on the year, but then there's a smattering of 1 sack and no sacks across the rest of their defensive roster. So he's dialing up these blitzes, but they're not getting that much pressure, which isn't turning into sacks. And then on the back end, they've got only 1 high safety looking to cover their butt. So if there is a game for Green Bay to break out, if there's a game for Rodgers to light it up, and we see the deep ball actually start connecting again, we see that same play that Watson dropped in week 1, this is the game where it can all click. It just seems like the right matchup. Everyone's terrified of our run defense right now. Well, shutting down Saquon Barkley, that'll do it for you. That will make the beginning of that reputation start to change. Green Bay, even though ranking 2nd in offensive plays, still can't throw the ball down the field. Well, going against a single high team that can't blitz is a good way to start changing the narrative. I think that this is the game that Aaron Rodgers breaks out, goes off, and the Packers win. There's just something. I love the historic matchup of Giants versus Packers. 2 teams that have clashed for years. I mean, we're talking at 70 years worth of matchups here. You know, Giants and Packers going for all those NFL championships so long ago. And now both of these teams go to London. Historic venue for 2 historic teams. In a crisp autumn air in a place that Aaron Rodgers has wanted to play for years. I know the Packers don't necessarily always travel well to the coasts, but I don't really care. I think the Packers break out. I think this one's a biggie. I think this one's going to be a 34-17 win for the Packers, thus moving them to 4-1. So, there you have it for this episode of Lombardi Time Brews. Those are the big things that I'm looking for. That's the recap of the Giants. As always, don't forget, hit a comment down below. Let me know what you're afraid of. Let me know what you're looking forward to against this Giants-Packers matchup. I don't know, as if, just a programming note, I don't know as if I'm going to have a video out tomorrow, or certainly not pregame on Sunday, because the game's 8:30. But for sure, I will hop on post-game for a Giants-Packers recap. So you can expect to see me Sunday afternoon. I don't know, this week's been kind of funny scheduling-wise for me personally, so I don't know as if you're going to see anything before that. So, as always, thanks for checking out Lombardi Time Brews. I hope you are having an absolutely great day. And as always, go Pack Go.